Hi, Mark here from the Tangent-Bound Podcast Network and host of the flagship show, the Tangent-Bound Podcast. Did you know that we over at Tangent-Bound are always looking for amazing podcasts to promote? And did you also know that we are also proud nerds and geeks of everything from movies, music, gaming, TV shows, and comic books to wrestling, MMA, soccer, and football? Whatever you can nerd or geek out about, we've got it. And if you're interested, we can help you find it. And if you're a show looking for a place to call home, we've got you covered. Side effects may include upset stomach, dizziness, tumors, shakes, and in some rare cases, death from excessive laughter. Though to be fair, it's only sometimes. Other side effects may include diarrhea, gallstones, heart palpitations, and strong desire for cookies on the dark side. Talk to your doctor and visit TangentBoundNetwork.com and see if Tangent-Bound Network is right for you.
We're not doctors, therapists, trained professionals of any kind, so if you feel you do need help, please reach out and get the help you need. We have a whole list of things on our files page over on Facebook at facebook.com/crazylifepodcast, and or just search on the internet for the suicide prevention hotline number, or go to NAMI.org or whatever resource you can find. But just please reach out for help if you need it. If you feel as though you're going to harm yourself or others, definitely reach out. And try not to be alone. Also, if you feel that way and you realize that you're writing a note or making plans of how you would do, like harm yourself or others, definitely reach out. That's a huge red flag. And lastly, please do not replace the idea of therapy with listening to this show. Again, if you need help, please reach out and get the help that you need, or contact us. We can try to help you find the help that you need.
A light sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. A light sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time, so stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. Then you'll see the clouds every day. Then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to the Crazy Life, everyone. My name's Jen. Why are you laughing at me?
Because you paused before you started.
Well, of course I did. Because somebody on the podcast likes to throw me off.
I don't know who it is. Not me. You didn't hear me say anything.
Sorry, folks. The interruptions. I tell you. Well, welcome to the Crazy Life, everybody. As you heard, I'm Jen. And with me, as always, we have Brian and Henno. And we have an extra special guest today joining us. We have Kiki. Hi, Kiki.
Ahoy.
Nice.
I like it. Mm-hmm. I don't think we've had an ahoy here.
Henno stole it once and I yelled at him.
Yeah. That's fair.
Like, you stole my intro.
Yep.
Exactly.
See, she wanted to be the first one to bring it on here, and you just sucked the wind right out of the sails on that one, Henno.
How you go, Henno? I tell you.
Way to go. Boo.
Well, folks, who wants to kick us off tonight?
I will, because I've got good stuff.
All right.
Even though I was in the sad today, so I wrote this on a pet grieving group. This was last Saturday. And this is my win for the week. Gratitude. Today will be 1 week from the day Jack slipped away in our arms. I am filled with gratitude for the friends who reached out every day, my work who gave me time off, my wife who grieved with me with open communication, my vet who printed Jaxie's paw print because I never did, and our Frenchie Bogart, who reminded me the love goes on and weighed down my blanket every night. I am grateful for my sobriety and the tools of the 12-step programs to remind me to be of service in my time of grief, to find acceptance, and know in my heart that Jax wants me to be happy, joyous, and free. The professional who took my wife's call to share tools to help with the panic attacks and medicine to help relieve the constant itchy anxiety feelings of fight or flight. I am grateful for groups online like this and breed-specific groups for the kind words and reminders of who we are to our special creatures, and that Jax is here in our hearts and home now and always. For the professionals online who write articles to help us find relief and not dwell in guilt or ruminate on negative thoughts and feelings too long. To find perspective and balance in a very difficult time. This list goes on and on. I am grateful for these tools that have allowed me to look at the photos and laugh and celebrate the love of my little man when days ago I couldn't. To leave the dog bed at his favorite window because Jax is still there, and then watch Bogart slip into it and have a nap. And then I said how excited I am for the new puppy. But that was 1 week afterwards, and I meant all of it. I wrote it because I honestly meant it. And it's just a reminder of all the tools that we talk about work if I choose to apply them. And I say it all the time. The only thing that I control is my attitude. And writing that was that was my attitude. That's how I felt that day. And it felt really good. And it felt good to find a way to get through this that didn't drag on, and that I made the choices that, I want. These are the memories that I have, and how do I go about it? Well, we talk about them every week on here. All those tools that we can use to reshape, reframe, gain perspective, find balance. It doesn't mean that, like I said, I had the SAD today really bad. But I went to work and I told my coworkers, I'm like, guys, I got this ad. My best friend, one of my coworkers, we got done with this big project. He says, I think after lunch you should go home. And I'm like, really, Omar? Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Why should I do that? He's like, you really seem tired. And I'm like, I'm just a little bummed today. But and then we started doing Arnold Schwarzenegger, and here's this, he's literally from Mexico, so he's Mexican. I'm not making a racial slur. So he says, I'm going to go down and get those fan belts. I'm like, cool, all right, I'm going to go over and work on this. And he goes, I'll be back. And I freaking lost it. Because he's from Mexico. And he just nailed me with an Arnie line. Yeah. And I'm like, everything's going to be fine today. It's my Friday. The day will be over.
You gotta follow him up with the Richard Dawson line from Running Man. Be like, only in reruns, pal. And then
yeah. Yep. Yeah, I just kept saying, come on, do it. I'm right here. Come on, kill me.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. And that's one of the, when I'm in the SAD, humor always works.
Yeah.
And so, it's been, for my first week back to work after this, it's been a remarkable week. I really feel good, and I'm excited for next week. We can finally get Benny. And in the meantime, we're redecorating the house. I got a new bed that's very low to the ground, so it's easier for puppies to get up onto. I found out our couch is actually going to eventually make it. We ordered it 4 months ago.
Yeah.
Well, because we found this other couch, and I'm like, oh, this couch is perfect. I'm like, well, let me send them an email and first see if this one's actually, our other one's coming. They're like, yeah, it's still on the way. Because literally, it's not on their website anymore. They're not selling it. I was like,
Jen, I just had an on the truck moment.
Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah, so it was a good week. And I had a guest this week, which was really fun.
Really? Who?
I wonder who that could be.
Yeah, Mrs. Arg.
How many A's is that? I want to spell it right.
Yes, exactly. How many A's is an Arg?
All right, okay.
And the funny part is it wasn't even my idea. All of a sudden it was like, you need to clean the basement out. I'm like, hey, that clutter has been curated finally curated. You want me to start moving that? But it was great. Like, seriously, garage got cleaned out, cars got moved out of the garage. This was last weekend. Like, things got done. And so tomorrow we're actually going to start, even though we don't have the new furniture yet, we're going to start rearranging everything and just placing it and seeing what else we need to do some things. So it's good to, again, get into action, get into, movement, there's so many things that I know I can do so that I don't fall into darkness and rumination and things like that. So
awesome.
That's my week. Feeling pretty damn good. Darn, sorry.
Oh my goodness.
I talked about a thing that holds back water. That's what that was.
It's funny though you mentioned that, because I watched the History of Swearing on Netflix this last week, and the last word that they did on there was damn, and it was just funny how so many people are like, that's not even a cuss word, type of a thing. And then they went into the whole history of why it was and all this kind of stuff. It was a really interesting episode, because I going in was like, why is this even on this list? Like, no one considers that a swear anymore. But the religious aspect of it and stuff was covered. And I was like, oh, wow. By the time they were done, I'm like, actually, it's like the ultimate swear word. It's like technically the only curse word, kind of a thing.
Truly it is a curse.
Right. And I should say via Christianity. I'm sure, there may be others, but yeah. So yeah, it was a good watch. I recommend the series anyway, if anyone's, into the history of stuff and swearing, which I enjoy both. So, you wouldn't know it on here because I'm a super good boy on here. So, except for when I'm not. All right, so who's next?
Well, Kiki, how's your week been?
Lots of studying. Lots of studying.
That's what we locked her in a basement.
They locked me in a basement. But actually, it was really cool because, when I first got here on Sunday, one of the first things, I did was Sharon and I came down, and she's like, look how cool this is. And I'm like, no, I like this, though. There's a zen and a calm in here now, which is really weird.
Yeah.
And because that's not how it was before. It was a little chaotic with all the clutter.
Well, that's I know.
Granted, yes, well curated. but at the same time, I was like, no, it's really nice. And then I remember at one point in time that night, I came down here. Sharon and Henna were both doing their things, and I just came down here and I just laid on the floor because we didn't have the air mattress yet, so I was just laying on the floor. And I'd had my eyes closed. I didn't fall asleep or anything. Didn't have any music or anything. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what quiet is.
I hear you, because in that kind of room, usually I'm still hearing my brain go a million miles an hour. So when you find that real quiet,
slow down and everything, it was like, okay. And that's kind of what got me into this whole thing. Because then the next morning, I ended up waking up at 5:30 and immediately jumped into the coursework that I'm working on. Got the 2.5-hour course that I picked out the morning done a little bit ahead of schedule, because thankfully it was something I already knew. But so it was nice to start off with something that I was familiar with and to get that refreshment, and then start working towards the more complex stuff. And then, that's basically but I've been making sure to take breaks. I've done a couple of things. I went and picked up a friend of mine's kid from school, and gave myself a break in the middle of the afternoon. Then we'll come back down and go back at it for a couple hours, and then go back upstairs, have dinner, and just kind of relax for the rest of the night. But yeah, it's been really good. Lots of I feel like back in college cram session.
So just for the listeners, previous guest Hillary. Kiki lives with Hillary's daughter, and Kiki's husband, Sean. So that's a lot of activity in a household. So that's why we extended this.
Yeah, and I was very grateful to Sharon, because she's like, well, would it help to do that? If you had, because she was initially asking me, because we had been talking through the week last week, because last week I kind of had a bit of a meltdown. It was a lot of stress over, I had just started my vacation week, and it was just a lot of stress over, okay, I have this new job stuff coming up. How am I going to manage doing all the training for it? because I have to do it all on my own time. I'm like, how am I going to do this in this house full of, a screaming 9-year-old who I love dearly? I do, but there's some days I'm just like, I can't. I need a break. I need out.
Right.
And just the day-to-day demands of being in a household full of people.
Yeah.
Comes with too. And I was like, how am I going to do? So I was a little panicky over that. And everything just kind of came together, and like Sharon had checked in with me, and she's like, well, would it help? She's like, do you need like absolute solitude silence? And I was like, no. I was like, I just need a place where I can buckle down and focus, not to get distracted with things out the window like the squirrels, not get like anything like that, just something where I can sit and focus. So she's like, okay, well, then this whole idea blossomed about, changing, the space in the basement and everything. And she was the one who extended it, which I was shocked just that she was the one who had extended the offer and everything. And then we talked about it with Henno, and Henno's like, well, yeah, we could totally do that. And he's been letting me borrow his laptop so that I can use it to get through the coursework and everything. And I was like, well, I am very, 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 very grateful to both of them right now, because that was a huge thing for me. And there were some other personal struggles that came with it within the relationships that I'm in, and they're slowly working out. Like, there's some understanding that's coming too, and some of it's just getting to the point where it's like, look, this is going to happen, and you're either going to have to deal with it or you don't, but whatever you choose is not on me at this point. So, but it's a little harsh, but at the same time, that's what needs to happen right now. So it's been a really good week, though.
Well, that's good. It sounds, from what you guys told us, it sounds like, that arrangement sounds like that's a win for everybody involved.
Well, and the reason it's not weird that Sharon suggested is, like, Sharon's incredibly stingy with her privacy.
Ah, okay.
Like, really stingy with her privacy. Like, there can be, you could be her a very close friend and show up at the front door unannounced, and I will turn the person away. Because those are the rules.
That sounds like me.
Like, yeah, it's like,
I generally am like, go away. Like,
like I have literally, there's been like about as close to family as you can get, and I walked into the back and I just mentioned, Sharon's like, who is it? And I said who it was, and she just gave me the look, and I'm like, okay. Like, she didn't even have to say it. She's, the look on her face was, the policy. So it was really, it's again, I just come back to, yes, this year started off with a bummer, but look what it's also brought. It's brought perspective and what's important and that kind of stuff. And Kiki's going to share with us after you guys about what she's studying, because it actually is relevant to our podcast. So,
which is awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, I'll go next. My week's been pretty. It's been pretty boring. I'm trying to get back into the headset of or the mindset of recognizing when you're in the moment and really kind of going, oh, hey, this is a win from who you used to be, kind of a thing. I told the story on Salty Language. I'm at a store and I backed up because there was an end cap kind of thing, and I backed up so I could, to be socially distant as this woman I thought was going to come through like as a cross section, and she just turned and just got into the line that I had been standing in. And I know very much in the past I would have been just like, "Are you kidding me?" like kind of. But instead, like I've tried to do more and more, I just kind of laughed because it was like, I totally understand where she might have thought, oh, he's standing back so I can come in. But that wasn't the case. I moved back so she'd have room and to stay socially distant. But I was like, whatever, And then I was in I went with my mom today to Walmart. She needed her prescription, and they will bring it out to the car. Like if you call, they'll do curbside for that. But I needed a couple of things, so I'm like, well, I'll just run in and get it. It rarely ever takes any real time. I was in line behind a woman who I could hear her telling the clerk, which I hate because I always feel like I'm invading someone's privacy when they're, at a pharmacy counter, because you can never seemingly stand far enough back to not hear what they're saying. So this woman, she just found out she's diabetic, and she's talking with the pharmacist about the changes she's made. But she had to have been the chattiest person ever. And I'm standing there, and I'm turning around at one point. There's 4 people behind me. When I got in line, I was the only one. Now there's 4 people behind me. And I could see the clerk kind of looking at the woman, and she's being nice as can be to her. But she's also seeing this line getting longer and longer. And she turns around and looks, and there's like no other pharmacy tech to come up to the register at the time. So they must have had somebody on lunch or something like that. So, you know, she's kind of like, and then she's like, well, I'm sorry, but I gotta, you know. And then the woman turned and looked, she goes, oh my God. She's like, there I go running my mouth again. I am so sorry, you know, to all of us. And I just laughed, and I'm like, it's fine. I'm not in any hurry, you know. But everything in that store, it seemed like every line, I had like 3 things. I had like 2 Hot Wheels cars and something else in my hand. That was all I was getting. And I'm thinking, all right, they only had U-scans on one end. So I'm like, well, I'll walk. If I see a line that's short, I'll jump in there. Or if not, I'll go down to the U-scans. All the lines had people with all the things in their carts. I get down to the U-scan. It's got a line of like 10 people with a lot in there. And I'm like, you're kidding me. There isn't one lane like that I could just jump in. I'm like, So I would start walking back because there was one that was shorter. And then another woman had been walking basically right behind me. So we turned around at the same time because she saw the line down at the U-scan, same point I did. And then her and I had a conversation on the way back just talking about, and she's like, my mom's out in the car. She's like, I just told her I'd be right back. And I'm like, I did the exact same thing. Like, I'll just go in and get it. How long could it take? I was in the store for like almost half an hour. And it was like when I was getting the stuff, that took me no time, you know, because I know the layout. So I'm boom, boom. And then it's just a matter of the 2 lines I had to wait in took probably 20 minutes of the 30 I was in the store. You know, it was like, and I just walked out, and I realized, like, as I was walking out, because I was still talking to the other woman, because we were in the same line together. Because actually, when we finally got into a line, we no more get in there. I set my stuff on the thing. There's one person in front of me. And then a woman who looked like she was cashing out, she turns and goes, and I'm like, and then I see the light start blinking on the cash wrap, and I'm like, oh, they called for a manager, and I'm like, of course, you know. So, you know, but the woman behind me who had walked down with me, she went a couple lanes over, and she ran back over and tapped me on the shoulder, and she's like, come on. And like,
That's awesome.
And went even further. She was like, go ahead. You were in line before me, kind of a thing. So it was cool of her to do it. It was just funny how, like, having those experiences, because most of the time when I talk about these type of things in the stores, it usually is like, and I get frustrated or angry because of inefficiency.
Rage.
Yeah, you know, and I've tried really hard to just not do that anymore, you know, as much as possible. Once in a while it still gets me, but as I was walking out again, I was like, you know what, I'm smiling, I was laughing while I was in there. You know, it stunk that I had to wait all that time. If it was only the prescription, literally I could have called, we would have probably had it in like less than 5 minutes. But whatever, you know, it was you know, it was fine. Other than the whole, you know, being in a store thing, which I'm still not a big fan of. Luckily, Walmart is huge, so there aren't very many areas where people are really packed. You know, they're usually spread out pretty well, so it makes me feel a little more comfortable, even though, you know, who knows. But yeah, it was, yeah, so that was fine. But that's been about it. I've been trying to get some stuff organized because, you know, I've got a lot that's just very disorganized. I mean, carefully curated. And no, I mean, it really is. Like, I fully understand what you meant by that, Heno, because I'm the same way. It can look like I have a giant mess, but if you ask me where blank is, I'll be like, oh, it's right here. I know right where things are in my junk pile. But it's kind of getting, like in the room I'm in especially, I was looking at it today, and I'm like, I'm starting to feel claustrophobic in here. So it's time to box things differently, move some stuff around to feel a little more open again. And, I got a hold of a Goodwill that I think's going to take 2 of my old computers that are, basically garbage at this point. And, so that'll help too. That just get rid of, like, I'm staring at the one right now because it's right behind my laptop. And it's a 27-inch iMac. It's just sitting there and it's dead. So, every time I sit down, it just reminds me and makes me a little sad. Like how much I miss having a screen that size I can use. But, yeah, so whatever. It's really, it's things, it's whatever. So I got a new T-shirt in today. It's got dinosaurs on it, and it says like the bodacious era on it, and that made me really happy because it's dinosaurs and stuff. So it's been, honestly, given what's gone on in the world and stuff, I've noticed that there's been an element of me taking that on, like I'll tend to do, because I'm paranoid about stuff, with my, with like agoraphobia and just everything going on in the world. It's been heavy, but I've also noticed that I've definitely found moments through the last week that things didn't feel that heavy. Things felt pretty, like today, things felt fairly light today. People were nice when I was out. It was, I'm glad. It's why I'm always glad when Christmas is over, because people start getting nicer again. And because they're not all like trying to get the exact same thing and fighting for time, so yeah, so that's been my week. How about you, Jen?
Well, it's been a good week. It's been a solid week. Nothing too crazy. I'm working pretty hard on my sleeping, and I've switched my coffee to half calf. So I'm getting the caffeine, so I don't have the caffeine drop in the evening. And then I cut out refined sugars, so I won't have the sugar high and the sugar crash in the evenings.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it working?
I had one day last week that I actually made it to 11:30 without a nap, and then I slept until 6 a.m. So.
All right.
That's the schedule I'm really looking for. Okay. I mean, I can live with going to bed at 10 and sleeping till 6, but I prefer to stay up to 11 and sleep to 6.
Mm-hmm. Me too. Stay up till 11 in the morning and sleep till 6 at night, right?
Yeah.
So
that's actually not that far off of my normal sleep schedule.
So slowly but surely I'm getting there, which is a good thing. I do notice a dramatic difference when I drink alcohol. When I drink alcohol, it does make me sleepy. It just does.
Oh, really quick, Jen, I want to jump in. That was something I forgot to mention, was I haven't drank like in a long time, really. And we did a podcast where we had some whiskey, and boy, did it make me feel like a lightweight. I was real sleepy afterward.
Yes, whiskey will do that too, guy.
Well, and Jen, I had the old move of like I felt fine until I stood up, and I was like, oh, where'd my legs go? And I haven't had that in a long time because my tolerance is usually where I can kind of gauge where I'm at. Nope. So sorry for interrupting you. That just reminded me of that.
Oh, that's okay. So yeah, I'm moving forward with was working on my sleep and trying to get a normal sleep schedule going, and I'm getting better.
Good.
Another thing that I was working on, I'm back on my very low carb diet, and I've added fasting in on it. So right now I'm at a 16-hour fast, which means I eat between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Mm-hmm. So that gives me right. Sleeping is a portion of my fasting.
Nothing but whiskey after 6. Got it. Yeah.
Exactly. Nothing but whiskey after 6. Mm-hmm. No. So I'm back on that to see if I can kickstart my system again and see if I can lose some more of this poundage that I have extra that I'm carrying. But as an interesting note, so we all do strange things sometimes when we're drinking. It just I know it's a shocker.
You say, what is this?
I never have.
blasphemy?
I'm always very
Oh,
normal when I drink.
You
Yeah.
mean I can go back out and drink again?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Just checking.
Sorry. Mm-mm.
Just checking. But I had a few drinks on a Saturday night, and I was online chatting with different people and just, whatever. And I was talking in one of my rooms, and this guy mentions, he's like, you need to read this book. I said, I need to read this book. He's like, yes, you need to get this book and you need to read this book. So I didn't even think twice of it. I'm like, all right, I need to read this book. So I Google Amazon, I go out, I get it from my Kindle, and I am good to go. No clue what this book is about.
Well, as long as it's not something weird like, let's just say some offensive book. I'll just leave it at that.
No, it is not an offensive book.
Okay.
I mean, thankfully, the title hopefully would have clued me in. I mean, I haven't read the book yet, so I can't guarantee it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm pretty safe.
All right.
So
is it Tawdry? Is it a Tawdry book?
No, it is actually a memoir.
Well, that could be Tawdry.
Yeah, it could be Tawdry. Called Untamed by Glennon Doyle. And the description is, let's see, in her most revealing and powerful memoir yet, the activist, speaker, best-selling author, and paid female quoted from People.
Sounds dangerous to me.
Explores joy and peace we discover when we stop striving to meet others' expectations and start trusting the voice deep within us.
Oh.
Okay.
That sounds okay.
That's where I know her from. This is going to sound weird. I know her because her spouse is Abby Wambach, the soccer player. I knew I had heard that name before somewhere, and I didn't know where. So, yeah. I mean, she's clearly, her own person and everything, but that's just how I knew her. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so we were talking about relationships and things like that in the room, and this guy jumped in and it's like, all of you women, you must read this book.
That's so weird that a guy, yeah.
Yeah, that's so good.
Huh.
And I'm just, he's like, you just will get such insight and such, such good things from this. You have to read this book. And that's when I'm like, all right, why not? I'll drunk buy it and see what happens. So
I used to do that though. Like when people would be like, "Oh, you should read this book," I would just go buy it, or I would put it on my Amazon wish list or whatever, with the intent of reading it later, and not even pay attention to what it was about or anything. So I feel you on that. I used to do it too.
Yeah, it was just kind of this like spur of the moment, just whim thing, and it was not even $15 or something. I think it was like $14.99 or something. It wasn't a really expensive book, so I didn't have to worry about that or anything. But It was just so random for me, and I had almost forgotten about it until I woke up the next morning and I looked in my emails and stuff, and I saw the Amazon receipt, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I did buy a book last night, didn't I? So, of all the things that I have done while drinking, I'm sure this is the least.
Well, at least
ever done.
At least from the synopsis, it sounds like something you might get something from.
Something, yeah.
At least it doesn't sound like something that, it's at least it wasn't like, O.J. Simpson's book or something like that, to where you're like, I don't know about this,
How I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then I got myself hooked on Bridgerton.
Oh boy, that's tawdry from what I've heard.
It is tawdry. There, but you don't see any naughty bits. I will tell you that.
Then what's the point?
It gets racy.
I mean, right.
It gets racy, but you don't see naughty bits. So trust me, I tried and it just is not there. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Of course I'm kidding. But
She's not.
Maybe. Anyways, moving on. But it's a good show. Brian's trying to hold back his laughter.
No, I'm not.
It is actually a really good Netflix series. Highly recommend it. Not something you want to watch with probably children in the room, but
Yeah, history could be
like I said,
offensive. Yeah,
it's more
It's-
PG-13-esque.
right. Because I believe it's from the creator of Scandal, if I'm not mistaken. So
It is
yeah.
incredibly well written. The only criticism I have is that the ending was a little rushed. But the reason I actually brought that up is because I was so engrossed in a TV show that I actually put down the phone, which does not happen.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, awesome.
yeah, so I actually found something that encouraged me to put down my phone. So,
Nice.
does happen on occasion. But so now I have to figure out something else to do with my hands other than spending, so much time on my phone.
Time to
But
take up knitting.
I actually do have some knitting and different things that, like different projects that I've put aside that probably could be resurrected. But we'll see. Kind of taking one thing at a time. But other than that, it's been a decent week. Nothing too crazy.
Like, joking aside, the toughest part is that, like, what I found is if something engrosses me, like a show or something like that, and I do put my phone down while I'm doing it, I have the want for, like, oh, I need some chips or popcorn or,
Yes, keep your hands busy
Right.
is difficult. And, I mean, my go-tos, because I do smoke, so my go-tos would be smoking or eating.
Oh, I assumed your go-to would be jazz hands, but,
And spirit fingers.
Yeah, spirit fingers too, right? I forgot.
Yes, not forget. Spirit fingers, for those that are not in the know, is when you wiggle your fingers when you're doing the jazz hands. So, jazz hands and spirit fingers.
Yep.
Throwback to Bring It On.
Yep. Oh, it's already
So, yeah, so that's what I've been up to. That's been my week.
Cool.
So tonight we're going to talk a little bit further with Kiki about what she's been studying and what she's been focusing her attention on. So, why don't you give us a little brief rundown of what you've been doing?
I have been studying a rather intensive course in regards to applied behavioral analytics therapy, which is something that is being used or has been being used for the treatment of autism symptoms and helping them be able to function and be successful in society and in life. And it really focuses on behaviors, and not so, like, I was thinking more that it was going to apply to the psychology of behavior, and it does give you the brief, psychology 101 on, what behavior is, why we do behaviors, and that whole rundown, which has been really cool and eye-opening, and a lot of it I kind of knew the basics of, but to get that in-depth was actually really cool. Now, where it differs from psychology is that you are now basically being Pavlov. You are directing people's behaviors based on certain stimuli and certain reward systems and reinforcements to make these changes stick or to stop them from happening, depending on what you want done. So it's been a lot of, with the cram session side of it, it's been a lot of, okay, I know why this works and I know that this works, but what is the science, like, what's the science behind it? Why is it so effective for certain populations and other populations thrive without it? And I'm also wondering, why aren't these being applied more than outside of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities? Because I can see where it would apply to a lot of things now. And
Sure.
It's been really good. It's been a bit of a struggle because, like, initially they start you off with the whole, ethics of being because what it's for is the job is a registered behavioral technician. So you're the one that's in the home, taking down all of the data for these different results. You're running the experiments essentially, and it's like, okay, I've done all of this. I have a little sister who has autism, And I grew up doing all of this stuff without realizing that this is what it was I was doing.
Right.
So now to find out that I can get into a career that does this, where they'll pay me to do this, I'm like, ooh, sweet.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so, yeah, and I've noticed that a lot of it too, the biggest thing that I've noticed, and I'm going to throw it back to an episode, I don't know what episode of Crazy Life, but there was an episode where Brian had said, notice people. That was just all, he's like, just remember to notice people. And that is throughout this whole ABA therapy training, was that is just to notice what things, what antecedents come before the behavior, what causes this behavior, what causes this decision in this person, and gives you this outcome. And so I've started noticing it within my own personal relationships and everything too. Okay, I thought that being kind and understanding when someone close to me was struggling and just letting them, telling them it's okay to do it on your own time was a good thing. But I also found out now that it is something that can reinforce that negative behavior.
It's one of those, real quick, it's one of those things we talked before about how a positive can become a negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So where I thought being kind and being understanding and everything was beneficial, the point of behavior for the person seeking that kind of, what is the word I want? The validity of what they were feeling was, there's always a gain or an escape when it comes to behaviors. Behaviors arise because there's either something you want or there's something you want to get away from. And in this case, where they were asking for, how valid their feelings and everything were, me giving them that attention of saying, hey, it's okay, do it on your own time. It's going to take, no need to rush it. That was giving them what they wanted. They wanted to hear that so that they didn't have to make that change.
Yeah.
And now I'm seeing it as, okay, wow, I can't do that because that's not going to change that behavior.
Well, all right. So
that's interesting.
So in your interaction, you can either benefit this person, but you have to know whether what you're doing is, well, the only thing I can relate it to is when I've had someone looking for me as a mentor in sobriety, and that question came up, was like, all right, am I supposed to do tough love or am I supposed to just do love? Which way am I supposed to do it? How do I know which way they're going to respond? And the response I got from when talking to other people is, do what you do, and it's either going to work out or it's not. All you could do is be yourself. Don't try to analyze this other person and think that you have some sort of way of basically playing God and knowing what's best for them. So are you learning how to find that?
Yes.
In
finding
the course?
that balance. Yeah, it's learning how to find that balance, because when you're dealing with children with autism and, kids who struggle with intellectual and developmental disabilities, you have this umbrella of similar symptoms, but you have to treat each one individual. So what works for this individual might not for this one. And so you really have to find that balance of, okay, do you give the tough love or do you just give love? Do you enforce this behavior because it's getting a positive result, or do you take away from that behavior, or take away go the opposite to get them to redirect and change that behavior? So it's kind of been really weird in how I'm starting to view my personal relationships and stuff, and how my actions, I think back on a lot of, the things that I've said to other people and things that I've helped with, or maybe could have helped with better and stuff like that, when somebody's come to ask me for help. And it's like, okay, so now I'm asking myself, and going even that step further in communication and asking them, okay, what are you wanting from me right now? It's that whole idea. Do you want me to listen, or do you want me to help analyze it? Because now I'm in a position, especially as a professional doing this job, I have to have that integrity with that job. And I can't just go out there and start playing God and trying to change these things.
But it's going to also be really hard to just like turn that off. And
exactly.
And I'm sure that's
the kind
something.
Of person that I am. It's
well, I would think it's probably difficult for a lot of people who go into any sort of behavioral professions to, you know, like if you're a psychologist or something, it's got to be tough to not start analyzing somebody else, or you know, or like you were just saying, kind of, hey, I think I know what you need right now, and you just kind of nudge them a little bit, like you might a patient, but it's like, hey, wait, they didn't ask you for that help, you know, kind of a situation. So, you know, it's kind of it's the Spider-Man, you know, with great power comes great responsibility, because that's a great power. Knowing what switches or ways to nudge people can be, you know, that manipulation can be used for good or evil, for lack of a better term, really. And, you know, you do have to understand, and I'm sure you're finding, like you said, you're finding that out, that, you know, that it's not something you just ham fist. You know, you gotta nudge it and recognize it.
One question I have is, all right, so the person that you're obviously working with another professional, right? And does that person have multiple clients?
Yes.
And are they relying on you to become kind of the primary for a particular client, or are you going to also have multiple clients? And where I'm getting at is the position you're going to fulfill is you're the one that's going to get to know the client at a level where the next level up professional really can't, because they're taking care of multiple people at once. Is that kind of the deal?
So as an RBT, I do have a supervisor who is a BCBA, which is a behavioral or a board certified behavioral analyst. They're the ones that, so my job is to interact with the individual and take down all the data. We're talking everything from environment to physical to emotional to family setting to all of that. We have to like we basically sit, like one of the first things you do is you just sit in the environment that you're going to be primarily working in, which currently right now, because of COVID, is in the home. So you have to sit in that environment and just watch. Just notice the interactions that the individual has with the other people in their house, with different objects, because you find things that are going to be objects that are going to be good reinforcers for that individual, and things that will help motivate them and stuff like that. So then the BCBA, you take all of that information and you give that to them, and they're the ones who are part of the team that puts together what specific protocols and everything we're going to be following in order to give this person their best.
So they're going to dictate the ultimate treatment protocol.
Yes. And I implement it.
You're the okay.
So then they give it back to me.
Okay.
Yeah, they give it back to me. It's a whole team effort.
Wow.
Really.
So this kind of works like
back to me.
Wow.
Oh, sorry, real quick. So this kind of works the way like nurse-doctor kind of back and forth works, where the nurse comes in, collects information, gives it to the doctor. The doctor says, okay, we're going to do this. The nurse comes in and then gives you the shot or whatever it is you need from that point and going forward. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So then we take that information back and we start implementing these trials and these different learning environments to basically see which one it comes down to. Okay, does this work or does this not work? And that's how it all comes down to. It's so crazy to me that, because you're doing this to help them become independent in being able to make their own choices, because that's one thing that kids with autism struggle with, is being able to make those choices on their own without being overstimulated or understimulated, even in some certain situations. So the fact that you come in here and they teach you all of this stuff, and ABA therapy and the techniques underneath that umbrella, like the the different therapies and stuff, like when you're using a natural environment, because some kids don't work well in a structured environment. They can't.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have kids that work really well in that. Once they've mastered those basic skills, they start being able to apply it, and then it goes back and forth constantly. And you're constantly reanalyzing all of the data that you take in and changing it to different variables to see if there's a better way to do it or if there's a way to expand on that. And it's crazy too, because then I start looking at it within my own behaviors. It's like, okay, this is a negative thing, or this is something that is negatively impacting my life. How do I go about changing it with the least amount of interference? Because that's ultimately what we're doing. We're trying to make these changes for them and help them make these changes, but with the minimal amount of interference that is going to that's not going to make them feel overwhelmed or anything like that. So yeah, it's intense.
That makes sense, because that's literally like basically similar to something my therapist mentioned to me when I was in there one time, was, that's essentially her goal as well, is to find something that can help me without triggering something or creating another barrier for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because the ultimate goal is to get me to unlock doors, not lock more doors for it, so yeah, that's understandable. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So I have we have a friend, a podcast friend that you know as well, who was married to someone that was becoming a law enforcement officer.
Okay.
And so part of the training is that all spouses were supposed to come in, husbands and wives, didn't matter. And one of the things that they learned about was that there are times where your spouse may start to use their techniques of interrogation within your relationship. And that to be aware of that, to then make sure that that's not, to let them know that you feel like you're being interrogated now. And I'm wondering if that same thing is like, again, you're learning these behavioral techniques, and is there a place where it may not be appropriate within your own personal relationships?
Yeah, and that's something that I'm kind of struggling with right now, because there's some personal issues going on, and both of us have stated that we want there to be a change. And so we're both trying to attack it from our own angles. And there's been some difficulty in communication, but it hasn't been it's been productive, but it's also had its moments where it's like, okay, this is not the time or place. Like, I can't dedicate the focus to this right now, or I don't have the words that the other person is wanting to hear right now. And then I get to a point where I'm struggling. It's like, okay, I really just want you to understand this. And I'm like, like I can't say it any other nicer way, so I just have to be blunt about it. But I do try to implement that whole idea of like, okay, bear with me. I've been going through, like, when I initially spoke to her about it, I was like, bear with me. I'm going through a lot of training stuff right now, so I'm going to try to not use this on you, but these are the things that I'm noticing.
Right.
And this is something that might help. So bringing it into, not telling her that she needs to do this, but maybe this would be the direction to go. To let her make that ultimate choice, and just giving her that option of, some sort of an answer that she's seeking. It might not be the answer she wants to hear, but
I think that's a good way of doing it, though, is like, if you are going to bring something that you've learned into the situation, is much like we've talked on the show before about, like, when the rules change, conversations need to be had, right? So, like, in that scenario, it's like, oh, hey, look, I found a new way to till the garden. I need to tell you about this, because otherwise this could get ugly, kind of a situation. So, you need to, like, hey, here's a tool I'm introducing now. So the open lines of communication there, I would think, at least would make the person feel as though, even though you're telling them I might be manipulating you, for lack of a better term, you're not doing it without telling them, which is, I think that's where, like I was saying earlier, the where you could use it for good or evil, because, once you learn how to manipulate people, you can do it without them noticing sometimes. And that's, that can be bad for sure.
It's like we talk about it from like a work standpoint, where you've gone and had training seminars on some sort of management, or like whatever, like hey, it's the corporate jargon celebration today, and we're learning all these great ways to reframe everything and to blah blah blah. And so then you bring it into your household, and your significant other's like, I don't care. I just want my wife or my husband today. I don't need corporate guru.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I think
geez.
that's really important, that to allow people to have that opportunity. It's like, okay, can I talk to you? Okay, do you need a friend right now? Like
Yeah.
you talk about, it's like, do you just need to download, or are you looking for my input? Okay, if you want my input, are you looking for something I have this problem because there is no way. Well, no, there is a way, because I have to do it. But my sobriety and the tools that I've learned and the things that I've learned in the 12 steps come out in everything. Every relationship I have, every conversation I have about personal relationships, it ultimately comes out, because it's how I've learned to, get past things. So I'm obviously going to reference it. But I definitely do change my language, because there is nothing. It is like otherwise, I will sound like a Bible thumper.
Yeah.
And that's what we call them. We call them big book thumpers. And Sharon and I, when Sharon and I talk about something, I do reference it because it's a common language we have in sobriety, right? I can say, well, this is, I can reference this other thing, and it makes sense to her. But here's the thing, and I learned this really early on. I do not do it on her. And it happened early on, because she came in with something, and I acted like she didn't ask me to analyze her sobriety. And I started to.
Okay.
And it was a great lesson. It was like, no, you do not get to judge my sobriety. And I was like, okay, you're right. I will never do that unless you ask me to do it.
Yeah.
Because right away I started bringing up the tools.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's between you and your mentors and your friends, unless you ask me.
Your coworkers, if you will, like you were using the
yeah.
job thing. Those are you are doing the work on you with that person. They're your coworkers. So it's the same idea. Yeah.
And I remember it was a great lesson. It happened once. It happened in the beginning of our relationship, and it has never happened again. Like, that was the whole idea of the amends for me. It's like, okay, I will never do that again. If you ask me, I will. And so I do not get into analyzing anybody else's sobriety now unless they ask me to. Unless they're specifically asking me for advice about that. Otherwise, I will just speak in general terms about my experience about something, just as a conversation. But it was something that now that we're talking about it, it was something I had to learn, and I learned the hard way.
Yeah. Well, that's just like with this current situation too. It was presented to me that I am a source of grounding and keeping this person in check. And I'm like, I'm glad that you feel that way, but that's not what I want to be as your partner. I don't want to be that person who has to tell you, hey, you're being crazy. You need to figure it out. So I told her, I was like, I think that's when I brought in the whole, I think it would be good to go see someone professional who actually knows how to handle this specific thing.
Okay, yeah.
Because I was like, because I can't do that, because my emotions are going to start getting involved with it, and it's going to stress me out. And then I can't be a good support system for her either.
Wow, that's great advice.
It is.
So that was my thing. I was like, I love you to death, and I'm glad I can be that for you, but I can't be that for you.
You know what? That's a great lesson. I think in general is like and that's the one thing I've always loved about the 12-step programs. It has never been, we have the solution. No, we have a solution, but there are also professionals out there, and that you should also seek out those professionals. It's never been exclusive. And I really admire that, in that, here you are learning tools that could be useful, but there's a personal relationship involved, and that can distort.
And that's something that they mentioned in the training, is they tell you that as much as you become a vital part of this individual's learning process and their success, you have to keep that professional. You cannot make multiple relationships.
Yeah.
It becomes bad. But it's I come from it from a different point, because I was the one of the individuals helping my little sister, like in
you're
a professional,
family.
and I'm family. And I was like, so sometimes like they do have exceptions for that,
Yeah.
especially in communities that are smaller, where a lot of people play different roles to different people already and stuff like that. So like I grew up, I was like, okay, I didn't realize that wasn't okay, or that isn't something that is I'm not going to say that it's not okay, but it's not something that they prefer.
Yeah, it's why a lot of therapists don't do therapy on their family. They would say, I can recommend someone, because, like you said, that safe space gets, I don't want to say tarnished, but, kind of know what I'm getting at here is that does change things when, like you said, when you're starting to introduce the fact that you are directly tied into a scenario. So, because that can cause, if something, you recommend doesn't work, they could get mad at you. They could, it's like, it's better off to have just a professional relationship to where, okay, this isn't working, I can just go find another professional. Not, without having to go, oh, I also don't want to offend my family member or whatever,
Definitely. But it's been good. It's good training. Like, it's good to see the other side of everything that I grew up learning in regards to affecting behavior. And it's something that I'm looking forward to the future benefits that it's going to bring too. It's a completely, like, I came into it with an open mind and some education on it, and it is only making it that much. I was like, okay. And they even talk about it in the course of how it apply, like how other professions are looking into ABA therapy as ways to deal with management and communication in regards to that, and employee behavior, and everything from medical fields to engineering into line work, all of that. They're looking in ways to make that connection with their employees stronger so that they feel comfortable to communicate and it doesn't end up in these toxic work environments.
Interesting.
So as far as like in your particular example, this is with regard to autism, but it sounds like this, you don't have to you don't have to go to school for this. It's more like the technical side of it.
It's the vocational side of it.
Yeah. So it sounds like this is a vocation that somebody that maybe doesn't want, they're like, okay, I'm not going to go to 4 years of school, but I am interested in this type of, care. It sounds like you're in a person's home, and that you can add more. So do you end up getting what kind of a certification do you end up with?
You end up with a certification you end up with a credential.
Okay.
As as a registered behavior technician. You get a certificate and everything for it that says, yes, you are allowed to do this. You can get that certification pulled and told that you're not allowed to be in this profession anymore. There's some serious ethics that go along with it, which makes sense. You're in the field of manipulating people. You have to uphold a certain standard to it. And so, but with this part of it, you don't. If you wanted to further your education and go on to become a board certified behavioral analyst, then you do have to get that. And the person that I'm training under right now, she's actually going to school for that. She started off in, I think she said, marriage and family relationships initially is what she started off with, and then she
counseling.
And counseling, stuff like that. And she just really dove into the whole behavior side, and she's an amazing RBT, and I was absolutely just floored watching her when I did my observation. And she just kept asking me, like, well, do you have any questions? And I'm like, when can I start? When can I start?
So is she working towards a bachelor's degree? Or?
She's working towards her master's right now.
Master's, okay, okay.
So, and like initially she thought the same thing, that it was going to be a lot of psychology and everything. And she goes, It is, but not in the way that you expect it to be. It's the actual applied side of psychology, not just the education side of it and all of that.
The theoretical
yeah,
side
the
of it.
theoretical
Right.
side
Gotcha.
of it and everything.
Yeah, when I was
cool.
in school for graphic design, I had to take psychology of selling, and boy, did that class open my mind up. You know, like really, because like you were saying, essentially, you know, you're learning, you know, about how a lot of things alter people's decisions, and like then we get into like color theory and how you can influence mood and different things via color and all this other stuff, you know. And up to that point it was like I was in art classes and all this, but then it was like, whoa, there's actually a real like cerebral side to this, a deliberate, we're choosing these colors because we want to excite people, or, you know, make a certain this or this happen. And it was like, oh wow, I didn't even realize to that point that how much, you know, how much stuff like that was used in a manipulative fashion, you know, all the way down to font choices and all this kind of stuff with design. And it was like, whoa, you know, it just totally blew my mind a little bit. But it was one of my favorite classes because, like you were saying, it's fascinating. I'm really fascinated with what makes people tick, like why they choose
Same
the way
here.
they do, the creative process, all that kind of stuff. I've always been a nerd for it. So, you know, I like that kind of stuff. Like, I wish I had really thought about that I like that stuff so much when I was in college, when I was younger, because I probably would have went into a field that way. Now,
Yeah.
like Henna was saying, you know, about people, it's like, I thought about it and I was like, do I really want to go to school for 4 or 6 years to try to get into an industry? It's like, no, I don't. Not at my age, you know, but I'm still fascinated by it. So it is cool that there is, like what you're doing, that there's an option for people who want to help and have that curiosity about them and stuff too, that they can, you know, help with a very hard situation to deal with. I've got a cousin and a niece that are both autistic, and I've seen plenty of stuff that their parents have talked about and what's worked and what's not worked for them. And it's an amazing thing when there's a breakthrough sometimes, you know, like, you know, because one of them was nonverbal for a while and finally said something, and just seeing that is so crazy amazing, you know, to see a parent hear their kid say mom for the first time or whatever. So you know, there's those potentials for incredibly rewarding behaviors, or like you said, just getting people to be able to function on their own versus having to depend on stuff. That's such a cool thing to do for people. So good on you and anyone else who's doing this kind of stuff.
That's where, and I think that's really kind of what pushed me into getting into this job and really buckling down and being like, okay, no, this is what I want to do. My husband used to ask me all the time, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I had no idea. I had no direction. I went to college for theater, for tech theater, if that matter. Like, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was just having fun after high school. And now I found this and I'm like, no, this is what I want to do. And like, I got into I've been in the caregiving field for 15 plus years just because I grew up in it. And I get into this caregiving job that I have now, and it is enjoyable. I enjoy the participants that I work with, and I enjoy the employees. Management is, but it's still not. It still wasn't giving me the fulfillment that I was looking for. Being able to, like, me cooking and cleaning while the participants are sleeping at night was not giving me the fulfillment and that enjoyment of seeing those breakthroughs.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting to see those breakthroughs.
Sure.
And that was something I loved doing with, like, when I was growing up with my little sister, getting to see those little breakthroughs and those moments of, okay, we can do this. And having the people that came in as direct support workers and everything that helped her with this process, and seeing how they got her and how they got her to function and motivate was just, I was like, okay, how do I get into that? Because that's really cool.
Yeah, it is. You're right. Yeah. That's why I was like, I knew this kind of stuff existed, but you don't hear a lot about it unless you're in that world.
Exactly.
You know?
And that's one thing that they're really trying to change now, because ABA therapy's been around since, if I remember correctly, like 1970 something is when they really started applying it. And I'm like, okay, that's a good chunk of time that's been around now.
Yeah.
And And so I was like, okay, I just thought it was like they're talking about how they want more people, more people to know about it especially because it's all like none of it's so doing ABA therapy, we cannot implement anything that is not scientifically backed.
Okay.
Everything that we do, every sort of trial that we run or everything like that is backed by some sort of data or scientific thing that's happened before now. So we can't do anything experimental or, theorized or anything like that. Then that goes into the whole ethics and the integrity of the
Sure.
job. We are expected to work based off of what is already scientifically out there and building on that. And so, yeah, I was just, it's really cool, and I'm glad, and they're really starting to branch out, and that's why they're branching out to things like different fields of work and everything, and how this can apply for just getting people to work together and breaking those communication boundaries and stuff like that, and getting people that have disabilities that are more than capable and very bright people into these fields where they're not, you wouldn't expect them to be in. And getting other people to understand that, to be able, because you really have to get everyone around that individual to be on the same page. They have to be like, it's not just me going into a house and working with an individual for a few hours a day, a few days a week is not enough. I also have to go in and teach the family members how to implement these trials and these sort of behaviors and everything too.
It's a full buy-in.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Right. That makes sense.
Well, that's great. It's great to hear that that's happening. That because I just think it's so many cases where people are just left on their own, or they're only work. Like the rest of the family isn't involved, or that kind of stuff, and it is so important. Everybody that I know that has a child that is on the spectrum or is completely autistic or stuff like that, there's not one of them that where everybody wasn't involved in some way in helping that person be the best that they can be, until the point where they choose to they don't want the help anymore, based on age or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's I'm sure there's just so many for everybody that has these great success stories of families being behind them, there's somebody out there that doesn't have a family that's behind him.
Right.
And so it's great that a career like this is available for someone like you.
Yeah.
I love it.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you.
I know. Amazing.
Good talk.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, I guess it is that time. So we've covered a lot of ground tonight, and we would love to hear your thoughts, opinions, and all that good stuff. So you know what to do. You can reach us at the Crazy Life Podcast at outlook.com. Is our email address. The Crazy Life Podcast.weebly.com is our website. You can reach me if you want to talk to me direct. You can reach me on the Twitters at Jen's Crazy Life. That's Jen with the G. And Henno, how can they reach you?
You can find me on Twitter at Ida Henno. Find me on Facebook Messenger, Henno Heiter, and I'm also on Instagram. And check out my other podcast, Moving Needle Post, where we just recorded, speaking of Arnold Schwarzenegger, our test of time. And Kiki joined us too. We watched The Predator, and we wanted to see if it was still worth going back and get in the chopper.
I love Arnold.
Dug in deeper than an Alabama tick. So that'll be out in a week or so. That was really fun. We had another guest on too, who's he really zinged me on something with Carl Weathers that you got to check it out. I was
nice.
Wow, all right, Mike, you got me on that one. So check that one out. You're gonna have to do that whole thing where you spell out your contact information again, because I'm gonna have to send it to Brian so he can put it in the show notes.
I'd just like to have people contact us and we can forward it on if needed.
Yeah.
That works too. But I am on
comfortable with.
I'm cool with being contacted through Facebook. You can find me on there as Kiki Hake, Kikihake, through Messenger or through just, posting on my page. I'll answer either way. And then I also on Instagram as, hang on, I gotta double check this because I think I screwed it up.
Yeah, you said last time it was COVID Kiki, but I'm pretty sure it's Kiki COVID, isn't it?
Yeah, Covet.
Covet, yeah.
Covet.
COVID.
I can't.
Yeah, not COVID. It's Kiki Covet.
Is that one?
Yeah, at.
Yeah, so it's at Kiki Covet, Kikicovet.
And you can see all of her awesome artwork too.
Yeah, there's some pretty things there.
Nice.
Awesome.
Guess it's
And
my
Brian,
turn,
how
huh?
can
Yeah.
you?
You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can try. It's also Stunami there. You can find my other podcast at salty_language on Twitter or at saltylanguage.com. That show's not safe for work, so please be careful when you're listening. It's me and my best friend just talking about pop culture, things in life, just random things. So yeah, if you're into that, please give us a listen. We are part of the Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com. So please go check out other shows on that network. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/crazylifepodcast. You can also find the show on Twitter, I forgot earlier, at the Crazy Life Pod, where I post when new episodes go up. I think that's all the links. And as always, if you need help, please reach out. There's lots of people out there willing to help and devoting their life to helping people. So please utilize that. I was listening to an episode of Mental Illness Happy Hour last night, and there was a woman who's an illustrator on there, and she has bipolar 1. And she was talking about how for years she didn't know that there was Medicaid options to help her with her medicine costs and such out there. So, there's a lot out there, and I've heard former guest of the show, Jeannie, talk about this too, which is that there's a lot of things out there that we just don't know about. So, please ask for help or try to, talk to your doctor or whoever it is if you need some like financial situations. Most doctors' offices have someone there who's like a social worker or something to that effect, or they can maybe help you with a referral if you need those kind of things too. So please don't overlook that. And of course, reach out, to your friends, make sure they're doing okay, especially with, COVID and all the other stuff going on in the world. Please reach out and try and make somebody's day a little better if you can. And also be kind when you can, and just please practice kindness and show empathy. And, as Kiki said, and I said once before, is notice people. It's amazing how much people will tell you just by observing them. And I don't mean that in a creepy way. I'm meaning that in like a, body language. You can see sometimes, like Heno's coworker mentioning to him that he seemed really tired or whatever.
All right.
Go.
There was a lady, I was out shoveling snow, and there was a lady sitting, she had her walker, and she was sitting on the walker, and the back of her car was open. And she looked over at me and she said something, and I said, excuse me, what? She said, could you help get my walker into the car? And I was like, absolutely. So I came over there, and the weird thing, all right, so she's not wearing a mask. I always wear an N95 though. So I'm like, okay, pick it up, put it in the car. She says, thank you very much. I'm like, do you need, and she said, no, I'll close the gate. And I turn around, I go back, and I stop and I look. And now, granted, there's ice on the ground. It just snowed 4 inches that day, right? And it turned into pack. And she's got her cane, and like her legs don't move. Like she shuffles, right?
Yeah.
And I was starting to work again, and I just looked up and I saw her like barely moving by the car. Like this was difficult and dangerous, and the back was still up, and I just was like, you know what, I don't care, I don't want to see her fall down. So I went over there and I offered her my arm,
Mm-hmm.
and she took my
Aw.
arm, and like this was difficult, and right away she started to put herself down, and just say, I'm an invalid, whatever, blah blah blah, and I
Yeah.
just said, no, this is just your challenge right now.
Yeah.
And she stopped and she looked at me. She said, "You're right. This is just my challenge right now."
Right.
And and helped her get into the car, and closed the gate, and it felt so good because, like you said, I got out of my own head and I paid attention to somebody else, and as a result, I was able to be of service to somebody else, and it felt so good.
Yeah. Yeah, because you could have done the surface good deed, which is just throw the walker in the back of the car,
throw the walker
shut
in the
the
back
deck
and-
lid, peace out, and walked away. And then maybe she slips and falls or something, and you never know because you're already gone or whatever. Or worse, you see it and then you're like, oh, what a night, But I'm with you. I would have done the same thing. I know.
I thought of you, actually.
Yeah.
I thought of you the minute I did it. I'm
I
like,
can't
this is
help
what
it.
Brian would do in a heartbeat.
I can't
And it
help
doesn't
it if I
matter
see
what,
something like that.
COVID or no COVID.
Yeah, it's just
it's
how I
like-
was raised. If you can help.
Yep.
There's times when I understand when it's really difficult. Now, I can think of one years ago. Jen, do you remember when you saw somebody on the side of the road, like you were coming home from work or something like that, and you were kind of like, I felt bad because I felt like I should stop, but also, you never know if it's someone running a scam or something like that. And it was like, I understand sometimes things you just get a bad gut vibe, and there's times like that where I'm like, no, this doesn't feel right. But like I was with my mom one day, we were going somewhere and I saw these two guys trying to get this couch out of this like U-Haul. And my back was killing me that day. And I was like, if my back wasn't hurting, I would have had you pull over and be like, hey, you guys need a third, because they were struggling. They needed one more guy because it was like a sectional kind of big thing, to where you need a guy on each point, basically. It just makes it so much easier to move it. And I was like, I just can't be that guy today. Otherwise, I would totally have been like, hey, pull over. Let me go help those guys real quick. And, it's just, you're right. That's just how I was raised. I don't know how many times I was with my dad and he'd see somebody on the side of the road with a flat tire and he'd pull over. Do you need any help? Like, cause those, the tire irons that they give people for their spare tires stink. And my dad always had a like pro grade, tire iron on him, not to mention, if I'm with him, we can, like if you have a lug nut that's stuck, you can kind of jump up and down on the thing to really get him loose or whatever. So that was the way I was taught, was he'd see somebody on the side of the road that needed help. We'd pull over and help them, or whether it's somebody or not, or, him and I stood out in really cold weather changing a tire for Jen one time that we could not get that lug nut loose. Do you remember that?
I do.
Him and I were taking turns getting in and out of the car to get warm again. It was so cold. And I mean, I'm like 250 at the time, and I'm standing on this thing, and this lug nut is not moving. And we're like, I don't think this is coming off here. And, you can't take an air chuck to it because, he didn't have a cordless air chuck, so, yeah. But anyway, long story short, or long story longer, whatever. Yeah, it just is. I'll probably always be that way. And there's times when I don't do things, but if I see something like that with somebody like that, it's like, I will always ask. I do it a lot at the grocery store as we're leaving. If I see somebody, I saw a woman who had one of the motorized carts and she was struggling to get like a case of water in her car. And I'm like, do you want me to throw that in your car for you? And she's like, oh, that'd be so helpful. Awesome. Here, and just do it. Sometimes it's to my detriment. I helped a woman at a Salvation Army carry out a giant microwave and, screwed my back up doing it a little bit. But no good deed goes unpunished, as they say. So,
Right.
anyway, yeah, if you can be that kind of person, please do. I'm not saying I'm some saint or anything. It's just when you can help, please help.
Exactly. And with that, everybody go out there and have the best week you possibly can. And before we leave, an extra special thank you, Kiki, for joining us. We really appreciate your time and all your information you shared with us. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And with that, folks, go out there, have the best week you can, and we'll be here waiting for you next week. Don't forget, and I almost did as I stumble over my words.
Yep.
Share the love, not the COVID. Be safe, everyone.